There is a specific crystalline moment that has the power to stop you in your tracks every time it occurs. You might be standing in the center of your backyard, perhaps lost in thought or simply enjoying the transition of the light as the afternoon wanes. You aren't doing anything particularly noteworthy. You aren't holding out a handful of premium sunflower seeds. You aren't making a conscious effort to entice a visitor, and you aren't even moving. Suddenly, a bird lands. It might settle on the rim of a feeder just 2 feet from your face while you are still replenishing the seed. Or perhaps it perches on the wooden arm of the Adirondack chair where you are sitting. It might even hop onto the ground so close to your boot that you could reach down and feel the delicate warmth of its feathers. In that instant, your breath hitches and you go completely, unnervingly still. You understand instinctively, in a way that transcends logic, that something extraordinary has just happened. Something that does not happen to everyone, and certainly not every day. You are correct in that assessment. This is not a random occurrence. The bird that has chosen to land in such close proximity to you has not made a navigational error. It is not confused, nor has it mistaken you for a stationary garden statue or a strangely shaped tree. It hasn't suffered a lapse in its survival instincts or lost the healthy fear of predators that keeps its species alive. On the contrary, it has done something far more specific, far more deliberate, and far more intellectually complex than any of those things. It has made a calculated decision about you, a decision constructed from weeks, perhaps months, of meticulous, silent observation. The conclusion of that decision is profound. It has decided that you are safe. Today, we are going to explore the intricate mechanics of how that decision is reached. We will examine what a bird is actually measuring when it watches you from the safety of the canopy, what specific behaviors allow a human to cross the threshold from a suspicious stranger to a trusted presence, and why the birds that allow you to get close are not merely being friendly in the human sense of the word. They are communicating something precise and data-driven about who you have become within the context of their world. Welcome back. I invite you to subscribe before you leave, because the insights we are about to uncover will fundamentally change the way you move through your own outdoor spaces. Today, we are diving deep into the sophisticated science of bird trust, what it is, how it is painstakingly built, and what it truly signifies when a wild animal decides you are worth letting into its inner circle. I encourage you to stay until the very end, because the final concept we will cover is the one most people never realize, and it has the power to reframe every quiet moment you have ever shared with a bird in your yard. 1. The long-term observation. They have been studying you longer than you know. The first and perhaps most vital thing to understand is the timeline of avian trust. Most people operate under the assumption that trust is something that builds gradually over the course of a few direct interactions. While this is true to an extent, the scale and depth of a bird's observation are far beyond what most humans imagine. Consider the black-capped chickadee, a common but cognitively brilliant visitor to North American yards. A single chickadee maintains a home range of roughly 25 to 30 acres. Within this territory, it is not merely surviving, it is an active data scientist. It makes thousands of discrete observations every single week. It monitors the movement of neighborhood cats, the flight paths of Cooper's hawks, the availability of seasonal insects, and crucially, the behavior of every human it encounters. A bird does not react to each encounter as if it were a fresh, isolated event. Instead, it maintains a sophisticated, running mental model of its entire environment. It updates this model continuously, making high-stakes predictions based on accumulated data. When a chickadee sees you for the first time, it does not start with a blank slate. It starts from a baseline of what humans in general tend to do, a baseline constructed from every interaction it has witnessed in its territory. Initially, you are simply a data point in a broad category. Potential threat? Unknown. What shifts you out of that category is behavioral consistency. Research conducted at the University of Exeter on garden bird populations demonstrated that birds do not just respond to the presence of humans, they respond to the specific patterns of behavior those humans exhibit over time. A person who moves with a predictable, rhythmic pace, who avoids sudden, jerky gestures, and who appears at consistent times in the same locations, performing the same tasks, such as filling a bird bath or gardening, generates a behavioral signature that the bird's brain recognizes as low risk. Conversely, an unpredictable human, one who sometimes rushes out the door, sometimes stops to stare intensely, or moves with erratic energy, stays in the unknown or dangerous category for much longer. When a bird finally lands near you, it is not the beginning of the relationship. It is the final validation. It has watched you move through the yard for days on end. It has noted the angle of your head, the speed of your gait, and your lack of interest in hunting. It has compared your current behavior to your past behavior, and at some point, the weight of that consistent, non-threatening evidence crossed a neurological threshold. The approach is the conclusion of a long-term study where you were the subject. 2. Flight initiation distance, the living metric of trust. The second pillar of this relationship is found in a concept researchers call flight initiation distance, FID. This is the specific distance at which a bird will flush or take flight when it perceives an approaching object. This number is not a fixed biological constant. It is a dynamic, fluctuating measurement that changes based on the individual bird, its environment, its past experiences with predators, and, most importantly, the identity of the person approaching. Studies on European garden birds, published in the prestigious journal Animal Behavior, found that birds in residential settings are remarkably adept at calibrating their FID to individual humans rather than to humans as a collective species. The data showed that the exact same bird might flush when a stranger is 20 feet away, yet allow a specific person, the one who fills the feeders every morning, to approach within 4 feet. This is the same bird in the same yard with a completely different physiological response based entirely on who is walking toward it. What this tells us is that the physical distance a bird maintains around you is a live, real-time measurement of your relationship. It is the bird's current assessment of the risk you represent, expressed in feet and inches. A bird that allows you to get within 6 feet has assigned you a threat level that the vast majority of humans will never achieve. A bird that permits you to be within 3 feet has placed you in a rarefied category shared by very few other living beings. And a bird that actually lands on you? That bird has effectively removed the flight calculation from its immediate cognitive process. It has decided that the question of whether or not to flee from you is no longer relevant to its survival. You have transitioned from an external threat to be monitored to a safe, integrated part of the environment itself. If you pay attention to the distances in your yard, you will see they are not random. They are a direct reflection of your standing in the local avian community. 3. The sensory metrics, what the bird is actually measuring. It is important to remember that a bird is not measuring your intentions. It cannot read your mind, nor does it understand your internal feelings of affection for nature. Instead, it is measuring something much more concrete and observable. Understanding these metrics allows you to consciously adjust your behavior to foster deeper trust. The primary signal birds use to assess human threat is the gaze. In the natural world, direct, sustained eye contact is almost exclusively a predatory behavior. When a hawk or a cat locks its eyes onto a target, it is a precursor to an attack. Consequently, direct eye contact triggers an immediate and measurable threat response in birds. Researchers at the University of Exeter tested this by having participants walk toward birds while either looking directly at them or looking away toward the horizon. Birds flushed significantly earlier when the person made direct eye contact. The gaze alone, independent of the person's speed or distance, spiked the bird's perceived threat level. This is why seasoned birders and wildlife photographers often use an averted gaze, looking slightly to the side or at the ground, never directly at the bird they are approaching. The second metric is the movement pattern. A straight line approach, walking directly toward a bird, is perceived as an aggressive, predatory maneuver. However, a curved, indirect path, where you arrive near a bird by appearing to move towards something else, like a flower bed or a garden hose, is far less alarming. Birds that have become comfortable around specific humans often tolerate a much closer approach when they perceive that the human's target is something other than themselves. The third signal is the relationship between body size and posture. To a small songbird, a 6-foot-tall human is a towering titan. A person who crouches, sits, or otherwise lowers their height differential registers as a significantly smaller and therefore less imposing threat. None of these adjustments require a theatrical performance. They simply require an awareness of how your physical presence is translated through the lens of avian survival. Small, consistent adjustments, slower pacing, indirect paths, and averted eyes accumulate into a behavioral profile that birds eventually classify as safe. 4. Individual personality, the bold and the shy. It is also crucial to recognize that not every bird in your yard starts from the same temperament. Within any given species, there is a fascinating range of individual personality. This is a concept that behavioral ecologists now take very seriously. Long-term studies on great tits in the Netherlands, conducted by the Netherlands Institute of Ecology, have documented consistent individual differences in boldness, exploratory behavior, and tolerance for new stimuli. These traits tend to persist across the entire lifetime of the bird. A bird that is bold at 6 months of age will typically remain bold at 3 years of age. These personality traits are often hereditary and have significant survival implications. Bold birds are usually the first to discover and exploit new food sources, which gives them a competitive advantage, but they are also more likely to take risks that lead to predation. In your yard, this means that some of the birds approaching you are not just responding to your behavior, they are expressing their own innate personality. The chickadee that lands on your hand the very first time you offer seed is likely a naturally bold individual. However, even the boldest birds calibrate their behavior to the specific human in front of them. While a bold bird has a higher ceiling for interaction, its actual behavior is still dictated by its history with you. The boldest bird in the woods will not land on a stranger's hand with the same ease it lands on yours. Your history of consistency provides the safety net that allows the bird's natural boldness to manifest. If you have a bird that comes unusually close, you are witnessing a beautiful intersection of two factors. The animal is being its authentic, bold self, and it is also applying a specific lesson it has learned about your character. 5. Individual recognition. You are not just a category. This brings us to the most profound aspect of the science, individual recognition. Research on corvids, chickadees, and various garden songbirds consistently demonstrates that birds do not just recognize humans as a general category, they recognize specific individuals. The famous crow research at the University of Washington proved that crows could identify and remember specific human faces for years, even associating those faces with either dangerous or helpful behaviors. The bird in your yard does not just see a person, it sees you. It recognizes your face, your typical attire, your voice, and your specific way of moving through space. When a bird chooses to sit on a branch near your head while you are weeding, or when it returns to the feeder while you are still standing right there, it is making a choice. Out of all the available space in its territory, it has decided that being near you is a net positive, or at the very least, a zero-risk experience. This is not a small achievement. It is a wild animal using its highly evolved instincts to close the gap between its world and yours. It hasn't been tamed in the traditional sense. It hasn't lost its wildness or its ability to survive. Instead, it has used its intelligence to conclude that you are a stable, non-threatening feature of its landscape. Most people can spend their entire lives outdoors without ever experiencing this level of connection. Not because the birds aren't there, but because the necessary conditions of trust were never established. You built those conditions, likely without even realizing the depth of the process. Every morning you stepped onto the porch, every time you quietly refilled a water basin, and every time you moved with care so as not to startle the creatures around you, you were contributing to a mountain of evidence. That evidence eventually crossed a threshold. The bird that lands near you today is the living result of all those past moments of quiet, consistent respect. It has chosen you based on a rigorous evaluation of your history. I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. How close has a bird ever come to you in your yard? Was it a sudden, surprising moment, or was it the result of a relationship that had been building for a long time? These stories of interspecies trust are the ones that stay with me the longest. I read every single comment, and I look forward to hearing yours. I will see you in the next exploration.